What's up, everyone? Welcome to Sitting with Sean, episode number 8. Man, it's crazy. I have 8 episodes of this out already. It's wild, man. Uh, but today I got a really special guest. His name is Joe Stan. What's up, Joe? How you doing, bud?
What's up, people? How y'all doing? I'm good. I'm good. I'm blessed.
Yeah. We all are, man. We all are. So, Joe, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Joe. Originally from North Carolina. I'm working in the oil fields in North Dakota right now. Plan on going back home for too long, so that's about it.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. And good old North Carolina boy. There's nobody like you guys.
Right.
Ain't
I don't know if
nobody
that's a
like you
good or
guys.
bad thing,
Hey, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, man.
but
So real quick, I met Joe on TikTok, man. I seen one of his videos come along and it talked recovery, and I was like, oh, here we go. Another person in the recovery community. I'm down for it. I'm for it. I love talking recovery. I like hearing people's stories. And so Joe, what made you come to TikTok?
the town I live in, there's one. I do a 12-step program. There's one meeting up here. I kind of see the same people, hear the same stuff. And I don't really know a whole lot of people up here, so I just got on TikTok to kind of connect with people. I was gonna, reach out to the recovery community, and I met some really good people on there, so it kind of made me stick around. But I've been on there for about 2 or 3 months now, and I probably get on there a little too much, but I have a good time with it.
Hey, it keeps you sober sometimes, right?
Yeah, just that connection with human beings, man.
Yep, that's what it's all about, staying connected, man. And yeah, I know my experience, man. Like I shared this with you, but I hated TikTok, man, because my kids were on. I was seeing all these shitty trends people doing.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like, I want no part of that. And
Yeah.
I share this with almost everybody that jumps on here. I heard about a woman who lost her husband to addiction, and she read a note, and I was floored, and I was like, if there's this much pain on TikTok, then I think I can do some good.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do up there, man. A lot of people, I think, get up there and put this fake image up that life is all great and all sunshine and roses sometimes, but I try to be as real and as authentic as possible. I got an idea about people that kind of hold their pain in. If you're familiar with what Stockholm syndrome is, like, it's when so you get kidnapped or something and get abused, and you end up developing a bond with your abuser and protect them. And I feel like human beings do a lot of that with their pain sometimes and refuse to bring it to justice and expose it. So I think the more authentic we can get, the more we can talk about what's hurting us from the inside out is a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Being authentic, being your original self. That's what it's all about. And that's what makes this life of recovery so awesome.
Yes,
And
sir.
because you're able to strip away all the shit that you put on yourself and that you've disproven your whole life, and just be able to be like, okay, yeah, this is what's wrong with me, and it's okay that there's something wrong, but now it's time to heal and get better.
Right. I agree
Yep.
completely.
Yeah, man, and the influence you have, dude. I want to say right off the bat, I am super proud of you. Just coming on and exposing yourself, and talking about the things that really bother you. Not too many people do that. I'm one of those people that do it, but it's very rare to see people do that, man. So I want to take a moment and say thank you for stepping out in the deep end and being and hanging out with me in the deep end, man, because it
Yeah,
gets fucking lonely out here sometimes.
yeah. I appreciate you for it too, man. It's always good, man, to see somebody that is really experiencing life as a human being and able to put that out there without fear. That's the whole thing. Is the most courageous thing you can do is be vulnerable sometimes, and chink away at that armor and really get out there and expose yourself. So it's about removing that last fig leaf, man. Just letting yourself heal, man.
Absolutely. Going in it completely exposed. That's what it's all about.
That's
All
it.
right, man. So let's get into it, brother, man. What was it like in your active addiction?
Well, I got a relatively late start as far as drinking and drug abuse. Grew up on a farm. Yeah, I don't want to say anything too negative about my, because I do love my family. We're working on healing some things, but childhood, did a lot of farm work. I played sports as a child. My first suicide attempt was at 6 years old, so like there was already something I knew that was off about me. And I never really felt like I belonged or fit in anywhere. Ran away from home a bunch of times. Going into high school, uh, got into sports, and that helped me to be part of something. So that did a lot of good for me. Got into college on an athletic scholarship. Uh, After my first year in college, I was kind of, sports became a job. It wasn't fun anymore. So that's when I started going into the darker things. I started smoking weed a little bit, and once I got out of college, uh, I started doing wrestling, powerlifting, mixed martial arts, and I was always in pain all the time. I got a good job out of college, so I was working 45, 50 hours a week, and then spending about 30 hours a week at the gym. And I think I was about 24, just in pain, just sore all the time. And a buddy of mine came to me. This is when you can still crush up Oxycontin and snort it. So he came up with a 80 milligram Oxycontin. He's like, "Here, try this." So he broke it up, cut it in the lines, and I snorted about 60 milligrams of it. And man, I was in love, dude. Like that was the first time I felt like I wanted to feel. I was normal. I didn't have all the anxiety, all the uncomfort of being in my own skin. And I can't say it was a gradual build, man. That first time I did Oxycontin, man, I was doing it every day. I was spending all my money on it. Didn't really realize I had a problem with it. I remember one day I was heading to work. I felt sick, man. Like, nose was running, just had chills, eyes watering. I thought I had the flu. I called in, turned around and went home, and I had a pill in my pocket, and I rolled it up in $1, crushed it up, blew it up my nose, and immediately all of it went away. And I was like, man, I'm fucked. That went on for a while. I did. I was pretty much a straight pill snorter for probably the first 10 years of addiction. So, well, I'd say first 8 years of addiction. And I never stopped. It was an everyday thing. I lost my job because of the dope sickness and not being able to come to work. And that point in time, I had vehicles repossessed. They were foreclosing on my home. A buddy of mine came up. He's like, I know a way you can make some money. Had the mixed martial arts background, so I think I was like 27, 28 at this time, maybe 29. And she took me to this warehouse. In this warehouse, there was a bunch of people that were high. I'm not going to mention any organizations' names in this, but there was some people that were kind of high up in certain organizations, drug dealers. And what they would do is bet on people. We'd fight, we'd get money, and I made a decent amount doing that. And while I was doing that, I got noticed by one of these organizations, and it's never affiliated, but they brought me in to do some contract stuff, enforcement, security, a lot of the gory shit that goes along with that lifestyle. But I was doing this. I had a lot of money passed through my hands. I did a lot of things that ended up on my fourth and fifth step. And when I got sober and started working the program, and by the time when I was 30, I found out that my son was coming. And I went. It's kind of a scary moment, but I went to these guys and I was like, I'm out. I didn't have nothing to lose. Now I do. And thankfully they let me walk. Didn't have any repercussions for that. But prior to that, there's a story I do want to touch on. I was in this trap house one night when my son's mother was pregnant. And, I was watching these little kids play with these toy guns and, the little orange caps on them, whatever. And I remember I was getting pissed off because they weren't handling the guns right. And anyway, I ended up passing out on this pile of dirty laundry. And this kid wakes me up, kicking me. I was probably 8 years old. He's kicking me in the foot, got the gun pointed at me. I wake up, sucker. So I looked past the gun into his eyes, and they were just jet black, man. Like all the innocence was gone out of his eyes. And I'll come back to this later on, and when I'm talking about this. But so that happens. My son's born, and I wish I could tell you. This is one of the things that came up on my inventory list too. I wish I could tell you that my son was enough to make me get sober, but in all honesty, I had a resentment towards him because I couldn't be the piece of shit that I wanted to be because I had a son. Like I wanted to spend all my time getting fucked up, and there was a lot of times I had to at least try my best to watch him, and that ain't saying like I'll be as real as it gets, and I'm sure it might get some hate in the comment section, but I'd have stuff out on the table and he'd be crawling around on the floor. I'd nod off. It was all that stuff that I regret and wish I could do over again sober. But I mean, that's the real story of it. That's what happened. If love could fix this thing, I wouldn't be an addict. Like my mama tried to love me to death, but in all honesty, she was loving me to death. With the enablement, and
Yeah.
so we moved past that. This went on. I was living in this other house. I had rented a house from my aunt for a while. She kicked me out when she found out what I was doing. It was the first time I really said, "Yo, I got a problem. I need some help." My brother kind of mentioned something to her, and she didn't like the idea of me doing drugs in the house I was renting from her. So she told me to leave. I got this other house, got a job. A buddy of mine hooked me up with a job. So I'm living there just trying to wing it. And so and then my son's about 4 at this time, and he's playing flag football. I just got one of the moments, man. I couldn't quit. I didn't know what to do. Felt like the biggest piece of shit, the worst father ever. And I tried to kill myself, and I was supposed to coach his game the next day. So I'm laying there in the bed, and I just shot up like a huge amount of heroin. I'm laying there in the bed, and my dog licks me in the face enough for me to open my eyes. And when I open my eyes on my nightstand, there's a picture of my son that is always hanging on the wall. Like somehow it made it to the nightstand. I don't remember doing it. And when my eyes opened, they locked on his eyes. And I thought back to that little boy in that trap house. And, my son's eyes still had life in them. They were still innocent. So I dialed 911. I couldn't say nothing. Like, I'm not even sure how I got the phone call. Cops show up at the house. One of the cops that showed up was like the only cop on the Clayton Police Department that I had a good relationship with. And so he comes in, he takes me to the hospital, Narcan, the whole nine. They let me out 5 hours later. So I get out and like, I don't know if you've ever been Narcan after being fucked up, but like you go straight into withdrawal. So I'm feeling like shit. I can't make it to my son's football game. So again, the head starts working, and I'm the biggest piece of shit in the world. And the day after that, I take all of that dope that I had left, load it up in one needle, and shoot it. And I lock myself in the bathroom so my dog can't wake me up this time. This is where God comes in. So I'm in the bathroom dead. And this cop that knows me was just so on his day off at the right exact moment. He pulls up in my yard and says, "I'm going to check on Joe, see how he's doing." So my front door is open. He lets himself in because my truck's in the yard. Calls my name. No response. He goes, sees the bathroom door shut and locked, kicks the door open, finds me dead, cold and blue on the toilet, and saves my life. And yeah, I remember going to that hospital. I was just so fucking angry. Like I did not. I probably owed him nurses and amends. I was a fucking asshole.
I'm
But
sorry, real quick. I'm tearing up. I'm just letting you know I'm tearing up, man. Do your thing. You got me. This is the first time I've teared up at somebody's story. You're good. Go ahead.
so I'm laying in the hospital bed. There's this place. Oh, this is actually funny right here. While I'm in the hospital, my neighbor calls. So my son's mom has let herself in my house and has taken photographs of all the paraphernalia, all the shit I have in the house. She goes to the police department and displays the evidence. My neighbor calls me and says, "Hey man, the cops are suiting up right now outside of your house. They got AK-47s and drug dogs and they're about to raid." So I'm like, fuck. So of course my landlord didn't want to let me stay there anymore. I didn't know this at the time, but my mom had been going to a support group and they were telling her to stop enabling me. Like at that point, I hadn't heard from her in maybe a year and a half. So I leave there, I go home, I'm asking for a place to stay. She's like, "Well, I got to talk to your dad. You know, me and my dad's relationship's been strained for a while." So I'm like, "That's not going to go good." She's like, "Will you ride with me to the store?" Get in the car, we go to what I think is the store. She pulls up at the homeless shelter and says, "Get out of my car, I'm calling the cops." So I got the shirt on my back, what I got on. And it just so happens this homeless shelter has a recovery program built into it. So I go in there, I'm there for 6 weeks, get introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, the 12 steps, and I find a sponsor. I'm still friends with this guy and start working the steps. So at that point, you know, I got clean. My job allowed me to keep it. Another friend of mine said I could rent their house. So at 12 weeks, I left that place. I went to the new area. I was living there for a while. Started working. Had some success, man. Like I worked the steps. You know, I was doing well. Then COVID hits January 2020, and all the meetings shut down. And I didn't know anything about Zoom. Uh, at the same time, you know, I had a friend of mine that was in stage 4 liver failure, and she had been drinking again, couldn't stop. Like she had got almost 2 years and went back out and couldn't stop. So I was like putting my focus on trying to help her. A couple friends of mine overdosed, and I got in this moment, January 4th of 2020, that I just didn't want to feel it no more, and I just wanted to get out of it one time. And I called. It was 5 in the morning. I called a guy in AA. He didn't answer the phone. Of course, the dope man's open 24/7. I called him. He did answer the phone. I went and got a bag of heroin, shot it up just one time. It lasted 10 months. On that cycle, I started using methamphetamine as well. Started getting fentanyl. Started dealing. I lost that job. They popped a random drug test on me. I told them I couldn't pass it. So I went. I was doing odd jobs. I was dealing at night, working at the day during the daytime. Met a guy. I tried to go to detox for a bit. Met a girl there that introduced me with another plug. Me and him hit it off and started dealing pretty heavy. There's a whole story about the U.S. Marshals in there, but I'm gonna skip it. But so we went to get some methamphetamine one night. This is June 12th, 2020. So we go up there. We get the pickup. I get back to his house. I got about a 45-minute drive to my house, and like I've been up for a week straight. And I take some of that meth, saying, okay, this will at least get me home. I mean, probably then some. Didn't know it was cut with fentanyl. Took a shot of it, had about a 20-minute burst of energy, started getting tired behind the wheel, and I was like, man, I can make it. I can make it. I can make it. I was 4 minutes away from my house, and what I remember about this event, I remember being in the ditch sideways, going up at 60 miles an hour. I looked at the speed limit or speedometer. I looked up and saw the RPC pipe under the driveway in front of me, and after that, I don't remember nothing. I remember some radio noises, some flashing red lights. I flipped the truck 3, 4, 5 times. I'm not real sure. I got a picture of it on on one of my TikTok posts and on Facebook, the whole nine. But truck was destroyed. It was upside down. One of the wheels missing. Like a tree was growing out of it. I broke my neck. I fractured my spine, and pretty much ear to ear on the back of my skull was fractured. That's why this half of my face doesn't work real well. It's still 80, 90%, or about 10, 20% paralyzed. I've got a lot of movement back in it, but it's not all the way. So I had a piece of my skull compressed on my cranial nerve. They took that out, and I woke up in the hospital after 3 days on a ventilator. So I remember feeling protected that night. I don't remember a lot about it, but the red, I know some of that was the fire engines, but there was like this red presence that was around me that night prior to all this. And so when I woke up in the hospital, I felt like fucking Wolverine in the Weapons X program. Like, I'm like, because in my head I'd made it home. I was gonna wake up with my dogs. So I wake up there, and nurse comes in. She says, "Mr. Stanley, you should be in a cemetery right now." She said 95% of the people that come in with your injuries die. She said the rest are quadriplegic. And she goes, "The fact that you're alive and can move your arms and legs right now has restored my faith." She goes, "You got a purpose, and you better figure out what it is and grab hold of it." I don't remember a lot about this, but I'll never forget what the nurse said. And when she walks out, they tell me I'm going to have to learn how to walk again. So when they tell me this, I'm like, yeah, fuck this, man. Like, willpower ain't never been an issue for me in anything except quitting. So I'm getting out of my bed when they're not in the room and trying to do squats. I can't barely like bend my knees, but I'm trying to do what I can, walk around a little bit without falling. Doctor comes in on day 5 after I woke up and says, "I have never had a patient on as much pain medication as you, and you keep asking for more." So I was like, "You don't understand. Like, I have a high tolerance." So he's like, "We're gonna have to start cutting you off." So immediately I start going into withdrawal, and on the 6th day I AMA'd out of the hospital. I figured out how to walk again. Got my little walker and got out of there. Buddy of mine picked me up. We went home, and of course I had some waiting on me there. So stuff started back up for another 4 months after that. There's a lot of stuff I'm gonna skip over because it's not relevant. It's just like war stories. But so about 2 weeks prior to when I got sober October 18th of 2020, or October 17th of 2020. I was allowed to see my son again, and he hadn't seen me since before the wreck. And like before the wreck, I'm 6'5", 285 pounds. Like, I'm in good shape. Like right now I look like I did prior to all that stuff. And at that time I was 230 pounds. So I was 55 pounds lighter. Just scars all over my body. I'd contracted MRSA. I'd had an A flutter from meth where my heartbeat was over 250 beats a minute. They had to fix that. I had got to the point where with that MRSA, it got septic, like it made it to my heart. Like, it was another whole stay in the hospital. I almost died again. And so I looked bad, like really bad. Had an eye patch on, face was all droopy. So my son comes up at the park, and he's like, I guess he had heard, his mom talking about it, but he goes, "Dad, did you almost die?" So I said, "Yes, son, I almost died." And he said, "Dad, if you die, I don't want to bury you outside of my window." so you always be there. And I don't know what it was about that moment, but I realized that in his mind that I would have been more present as a father in the ground outside of his bedroom window than I had been walking on top of it. And like I said, there was never one circumstance that was like, okay, that's it. Like, not homeless, not arrested, not the wreck, not him being born. Like, no one event has ever made me say that's enough, I'm done. But when he said that, like, I felt the pain of everything that living in active addiction had brought on me. And I was as spiritually broken as I had ever been. So, like, when I tell you what rock bottom was for me, it wasn't anything. It was the fact that I was out there digging my own grave and I couldn't fucking die. And I was at that place where, they talk about this in the program, that jumping off point where you can't imagine a life with or without drugs and alcohol. And what that meant for me is, like, I didn't know, I'd lost the ability to give and to receive love. Like, my love that I gave always had strings attached to it. And I hated myself, so I didn't think I was even lovable. So I didn't have the ability to do either. And that point, well, I just felt so fucking alone on this planet, and I didn't want to live another day the way I was living. So a week after that, went to the airport. A buddy of mine dropped me off. I missed my plane 3 times because I was so fucked up. But buddy took me to the airport, dropped me off. I took my last shot of methamphetamine in the airport bathroom. Got on the airplane, went to California. This place called Howard Lodge. I got to give them a shout out. They saved my life, man. Like, they saved my life. Like, I got a full, like, just pushed right in to the 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. The guy that owns the place, Chet Howard, that's my sponsor. He won't mind me saying his name on here. He's a douchebag. But yeah, that's those guys saved my life. So from California, I got a job in the lumber yard. I started doing steps. Met a guy in North Dakota. Came up here to get a job, and here I am.
My God, I've never teared up from somebody's story, and that you did it. No, don't apologize. Don't.
I've teared up over it a couple times myself.
No, don't apologize, brother. Fuck. I just remember. I remember that desperation of of the whole situation. With me is one of the things that still haunts me. From my active addiction is my daughter, my biological daughter. When I went to go drop her off at her mom's in Georgia, she said, "Dad, don't go." And I that was the moment that I realized, like, I never wanted to be my dad when I was a kid. Even growing up, I didn't want to be my dad, because he was the best raising me, and him and I have a much better relationship now. But I remember looking at my dad and saying, "Dad, don't go," and he said, "Well, I gotta go."
Yeah.
And when my kid said, "Dad, don't go," I looked at her and I said, I gotta go.
Right.
And I went home, looked at myself in the mirror, and the scariest shit was looking up and seeing your dad staring back at you.
Right. Yeah.
And when you're talking about being present as a father, man, like, there are so many times I ran away from my kid, because I didn't feel like I was worthy enough. I didn't feel like I was worthy enough for her love. I wasn't able to give that love because I didn't love my fucking self at all. I hated who I was. I hated everybody around me, but I hated myself more. And I can relate to a lot of your story, a lot of it, man. And I'm speechless, dude. You've had a hell of a life.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope it gets. It's completely different today, man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't get to see my son like I want to because he's still in North Carolina. But I talk to him a couple times a week. I'm paying child support, which it's just a typical responsibility of an adult, but it's a big deal for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Like me, and I talk to my mom a couple times a week. And this is a woman that went about a year and a half, 2 years without speaking to me. And it wasn't, I always talk about this to people, they come into meetings sometimes or even on TikTok, and, it's the negative parts, like life is so hard, active addiction, da da da. And the point I make is, like, if you think it's hard to be an addict, why don't you try loving one? Because, it's waiting up, not knowing every time the phone rings if it's going to be that call, or having to mourn for your child when they're still alive, or your husband or your wife or your parent, and you don't know where they're at, what they're doing, and, like, just to find out that they're in fucking jail brings you a sense of relief, because
Yeah.
at least they're somewhere where they're fed, they got a roof over their head, and they're safe. Like, it's definitely hard to be an addict, but to love one, man, and I've been on both sides of this at this point. It's like working with other people in active addiction is really opened my eyes to, man, that's had to be how my mother felt, or that had to be how my relationship partner at that point in time felt. And it's it gives me a new appreciation for the people that God has put in my life. It gives me motivation every day when I wake up, that I don't want to make them suffer that anymore, and I don't want to suffer myself. So, just try to find the best way to help somebody today, and that's what it's about for me.
Yeah. I remember at the beginning you were talking about getting hooked instantly. I uh, you know, uh, pills and hard stuff were never my thing, but but it was because I liked it too much. Like I loved, yeah, I've done coke before, and I liked it too much, and I was like, and this was me and my addicted mind, justification. I was like, if I like it too much, I'm not going to do it. But yet, I got a captain, or I got a fucking handle of Captain in the fridge. I can drink that, and I'll be all right.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like, just the justification of I like it too much, but I've got another substance to substitute for it.
right.
And yeah, and like you and I talked about this online, or offline, was about the concept of California sober, and that's not sobriety, that's not recovery, because all
Right.
you're doing is substituting one substance of choice for another one.
Well, what I'll say about California sober, it's a version of harm reduction, and I think it's basically self-imposed MAT, medical assistant treatment. I
Yeah.
will say that if it is a progressive movement towards getting sober, that I can see it as being recovery,
Yeah.
because you are progressing to that, but it's not sober. Like, you can't, like, words mean things. Like, sober means I'm not drinking alcohol, I'm not getting fucked up, anything from the neck up, I'm not doing. It's not clean. It can be a progressive form of recovery, but it's not sober. And I think it's mislabeled in that way. Like, by saying California and saying sober with it, a lot of people are like, fuck that shit. It's not sober. And then, there's this whole argument going back for, well, it keeps me alive. And like, I don't care what people do, man. Like, whatever they do to keep them alive, I support. But, like, I do have an issue with language. Like, words mean things. And, if you're going to say it's sober, then be sober. If you're going to say it's, I'm using this as a stepping stone to get sober, then we can call it recovery. We can call
Yep.
it, but
So you mentioned MAT, medically assisted treatment. I used to have a negative connotation when it came to that, and a negative thought process. And that was because when I was in jail, I seen people using Suboxone, but using Suboxone to get fucked up.
right,
And they would put it in their eyes, they'd mix it in water, put it in their eyes, they would, whatever. But they would abuse it, to the point where they're getting fucked up. And like, so I had a real negative connotation, really negative thought process when it came to that. And even like Vivitrol and stuff like that, like getting out of jail, hearing about Vivitrol and stuff like that. But some of my closest friends, what really changed my mind, I don't know how you feel about it, but what really changed my mind was I have a good buddy that lives in Tennessee, in Nashville, and he is a vet buddy of mine. I'm a vet too. And he was one of my medics. And so I know his story. And we've talked his story. He's going to be a guest on my show here very soon. But he was like, yeah, man, I just got this prescription for Suboxone. And I was like, the first introduction that I have with Suboxone after being out of jail. And he's like, yeah, man, I just got this prescription for Suboxone. I was like, fuck you mean you're taking Suboxone? And he's like, well, it's helping me stay sober. And I was like, well, that's not sobriety. That's not recovery. And
Right.
and I said that. And I was like, that's not sobriety. That's not recovery. He's like, am I doing meth? I was like, no. He's like, am I shooting heroin again? I said, no. He's like, have I been in jail for an extended period of time? I said, no. And he's like, okay, it's keeping me sober. And I was like, all right. So then I started doing research and stuff like that. And there's millions of people worldwide that are using, Suboxone, Vivitrol, methadone, and even medical marijuana to stay sober. And so I had to really take an evaluated step. And I know that was, for me, that was one of the prejudice that I had when I started getting into this was people that were using MAT as a form of recovery. But then I had to stop and think about it. And it's like, it's not my recovery.
Right.
If it's keeping them sober and they're staying sober, then hey, good on them. So what do you feel about that?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that, man, because I actually put a lot of thought into that specific thing last night, man. So, Dr. Silkworth, the people that kind of ushered in the 12-step deal, he says it's a disease of the mind, body, and spirit. So I'd be hard pressed to say that, some people are more attacked on the spiritual level of this disease. Some people are more attached in the mind part. Some people are more attached in the physical part. I think those that are more attached in the physical part, MAT is probably a good method for them. For me, mine was spiritual. Like, mine was spiritual. I mean, it affected the other things, but like on a spiritual. That's why, when I said rock bottom was a spiritual brokenness for me. That was the only thing that was enough to get me sober. So I remember going to the methadone clinic and trying that, and all I did was fish for other people to get fucked up with. Like, I got a video making fun of this. Like, I do this character called a mad addict on TikTok, but there's a video where, I'm in character and I go, it's just a random parking lot up here, but like, I would do this at the methadone clinic. I'd go and lay like little ticket bags out there, sit back and watch, and when somebody would pick it up and not throw it away and get in the car with it, I'm like, I got somebody to get fucked up with. I can sell to this person. It was not like methadone and Suboxone didn't work for me because, somebody that works a 12-step program, when I get to step 3 and I'm saying I'm going to turn my will and my life over to God as I understand him. Like, if I got to show up at 5 o'clock in the morning at the clinic and turn my will and my life over to the doctor that's prescribing me or giving me Suboxone or methadone, then I'm not relying on God. And it's really, for me, because mine is a spiritual thing, and, it's not so much the physical or the mental with me. When I rely on things other than God, then I'm already heading right back to the trap house. And I think Matt works for the people that are more physically susceptible. I think, there's other options for those. I think AA also work for those that are, the mental part. I think all of us got the mental part, but, the differentiation comes with the spirit and the body. And, I think that's where the line is drawn. So, like, for me, I don't consider myself sober if I'm using any chemical to rely on to get me through the circumstances of life. So, like, cigarettes, caffeine, people make arguments about that, energy drinks, whatever. And for me, it's like, I'm not relying on, like I hit my vape earlier, like, I'm not relying on this vape to get through this moment in life. If I put drugs or alcohol in my body, I'm relying on that shit to get through everything. Good times, bad times, medium times. Like if I feel bad, I want to feel good. If I feel good, I want to feel better. And, for me, I've got to plug into the source that made me. So where I get my validation from, where I get, my value and my self-worth from is my creator. And I can't rely on something else to give me that. Like even when life is bad and somebody makes me feel like I'm not worth it, like God made me and he made me worth it. So I've got to plug into that. That's got to be my source of everything to get through anything.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing, man. Like I don't knock people for doing mad. I think I don't mean to like bulldoze this. I just
No, you're good. You're good.
I've done a lot of thinking. I put a video out on Matt the other day, and it's kind of got blurred. With the government getting involved in the MAT and harm reduction, it's got blurred between harm reduction and drug promotion. So San Francisco, Los Angeles, for example, these two cities, drug addiction and homelessness go hand in hand, right? So these two cities, the homeless rate, overdose rate, when they introduced like the needle exchange and drug exchange programs, the homeless rate, the overdose rate and the homeless increased 70%. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, San Francisco would take the homeless population, they put them up in hotels that the city paid for, and they would deliver drugs and alcohol to their hotel rooms for free. And in 2020, the homeless death rate doubled because of that. It wasn't COVID. I mean, 1% of people that got COVID died, and that was the same percentage that went on in the homeless rate, but the rate of homeless death doubled under the guise of harm reduction. So, like, you really got to be careful about what's going on here. Maybe it's a form of population control. Maybe, there's just a way to eradicate the homeless. I'm not real sure, but I do know that addiction and homelessness goes hand in hand so much that, if we find a way that can curb addiction and get people sober and clean, then, the homeless rate will definitely drop off there.
Absolutely. So you touched a little bit about what led you into recovery, but what does your recovery program look like now? What's keeping you sober?
I do a lot of things to stay sober, man. I sponsor people. I go to meetings on Zoom. I go to meetings in person. Like I said, it's mind, body, and spirit. So, I go to the gym, exercise, do things mentally, like as far as reading. I watch, I listen to talk radio that's informative. Just try to learn, try to expand, activation upstairs, and then I pray. I pray a lot. Okay, I'm real careful about when I say amen because I like to keep an open dialogue with God throughout the course of the day. And I talk to him. I do service work, like even not in recovery. Like somebody calls and asks me to help do something. I always get asked to help people move. But normally when people call me and ask me for help, I'm willing to do it. I don't expect things in return from it. And like doing these things. So there's like such a correlation in addiction and trauma. And there's a doctor, Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of him, but if you haven't, look him up. But he talks a lot about the trauma response from, these traumatic events to addiction. And what he says is, trauma doesn't have to be sexual assault or abuse. It can be something as small. Like an example he gives is like a kid comes in, he wants a cookie before dinner. His mom says, no, you can't have the cookie before dinner. Kid starts crying. His mom says, good little boys don't cry. And what the little boy hears is crying little boys aren't loved. So in his mind, he's like, I can't show my emotion. I can't show my feelings. And this is something that life beats out a lot of us, especially men, is that we can't be vulnerable. We can't show exactly how we feel in the moment. And that is shame being attached to your spirit. So God made me to be a certain way, right? Like when I was born, I was exactly the way God intended. Over the course of time, I was taught by the world that I can't cry, that I can't ask for help, that I can't be a feeling, emotional human being. So when those moments would come up, I'd have shame in who I was. That's trauma. And that's why prison doesn't work for us, because when they lock up an addict in prison, the shame builds. Now he gets out of prison, he can't get a job. The shame builds. What's he gonna do? He's gonna go right back to the needle. And that's the shit that takes me out of shame. Like, I've got to do something with pain. I've got to give my pain a purpose. I've got to be able to use it to help somebody else. So then it can't be a weapon for them to hurt me. And that's the way my program works today. So I try to be as transparent, be as open, and be as willing to help people as possible. And if there's something that I've been through, I don't hold it back. Like in a one-on-one setting, if I'm talking to somebody and they're going through some shit I've been through before, they're going to get every bit of it. And this is how I got through it. But that's the shit that keeps me sober today.
You are a fucking amazing human being. You know that.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Just trying to be the guy God made me to be,
Yeah. Be the best human being that you can be every day. And you're an amazing human being, dude. You've been through hell. You put your life through hell. And you've come out the other end a little bit scathed, but better for it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that I don't struggle. Like I suffer today just like I did back then. It's just today I don't act on impulse. I try not to make decisions based on emotion. I go to God, I pause, and I pray about it. And usually when I feel like I'm getting rejected, I'm normally getting redirected. God will shut a door and open another one. I just got to quit beating down locked doors. Because the thing is, like, when he pulled me out of addiction and I kicked that door back in January 4th of 2020, the price tag went up. Pain is the price of better life. And like, I had a lot of fucking pain to get back out of it. And, this time I don't want to go back through that closed door.
Well, brother, you won't have to go through that closed door because you got a huge support system, and I'm part of that.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother.
No problem. I appreciate you too. So, man, if anybody's going through this, any struggle, with addiction, mental health disorders, what have you, what advice would you give them or suggestion would you give them to help them out?
Mental health, addiction, I mean, they're hand in hand. I'd say ask for help and be willing to take it. It's like, nobody can help you unless you're willing to be helped. And when you get to the point, and that's the thing about this is, I heard a lady speak one night, and she said, if I could snap my fingers and get you immediately right now to step one, I wouldn't do it. She said, because I wouldn't want to rob you of the journey that it takes for you to get there yourself. So, like, and that's the thing is, like, people talk about the rock bottom part. Like, I've heard, I met a guy that said his rock bottom was when he crashed his yacht into the dock pier. And he called a senator friend who got him involved in treatment and got him sober. And I'm like, man, why couldn't that be my rock bottom? I wish I could have crashed my yacht.
Right.
Yeah, I heard a woman say that her rock bottom was falling off a bar stool one night. And that was it. Like, you hit rock bottom when you quit digging. So, like, when you get to the point where you want to quit digging and you ask for help, just be willing to take it. Be open-minded, willing to have solutions. If you're not open to God, like, you see it's working for somebody else, and maybe just be willing to get open to God. Maybe if that doesn't work for you, then maybe some of those other things will work for you. But when you go into something make sure you're ready. Like, is I can't do it for my son. I can't do it for my mom. I can't do it for anybody else. Because if I do it for somebody else, what if they don't want to be in my life? What if they die? Like, what do I do then? Like, I've got to do this because it's what I'm supposed to do. And all I can say, man, is help. HELP, his ever loving presence. When you ask for help, that's what I'm asking for.
Man, you hit on two good things that I really want to hit on real quick. First is you got to be willing to accept that help. It takes a lot to ask for help, especially men, because we're so used to saying, fucking, we got it, we can do it on our own. But when you start asking for that help, you have to be willing to accept that help. And I so many times I've asked for help, but never was willing to accept the help that was given to me. So I couldn't make any progress.
Right.
And then the second thing that you mentioned is doing it for yourself. Getting sober for yourself, dude. I every single time that I've had stints of sobriety, a year here, 2 years there, I always put my recovery, or I wouldn't even call it recovery because it wasn't recovery. I always put my sobriety on somebody else. So when that person left, I had nobody to live for. I had no reason to stay sober.
Right.
So I relapsed every time. And this time, and everybody had a problem with it. Everybody around me, with the exception of the people that understood, had a problem with me saying that that I had to get sober for myself. Right. So when my in-laws came to me and they're like, well, you're not sober for your family. And I was like, well, they come next. But for me, primarily, it's for me. I said, because if something happens and my wife leaves, the kids, leave, God forbid any of that or anything worse happens, I have myself to live with.
Right.
And I have to look at myself in the mirror. And if I put my sobriety or my recovery on them when they leave, I don't have anything to be sober for at all. Right. And so that is huge in recovery, is doing it for yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was a guy I was in treatment with one time, and he'd always say that dying ain't no good way of living. It's some old North Carolina country boy sayings, man. And like I attach on to them, but yeah, it's like, and it says in the big book that reliance on humans will fail utterly. And that's the whole thing, is like, I want to be a human someone can rely on, so I can't be a human that relies on human. Yeah. Like, they talk about higher powers and the doorknob, but man created a doorknob. Like, I'm more powerful than a doorknob. Like, and the thing about doorknobs is they turn on you sometimes.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's all about, man. Like, God put me here for a purpose, and my son ain't my son. Like, he's Jacob. Like, I'm Joe. I was Joe before I was Jacob's dad, and like, I was just a gateway that God used to get my son to this earth. Like, I don't own him, so I can't lose him. If he leaves, then if God calls him home, God forbid that, but if he calls him home, I've got to be grateful for the time I had with him and still conduct myself in a manner that will make him proud. And that's what this thing's about, is like, it's about a legacy. I've never seen a hearse with a trailer hitch attached to it. Like, I can't take none of the stuff with me, and what matters is what I leave behind. So the only things in this world that I own, like, I don't own the clothes on my back, this chain. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. Like, anything that a man can take away from me is not mine. The things that I own are my peace of mind, the love that I give, the my faith. Like, these are the things that I truly own, and the only way I can keep them is by giving them to somebody else. And it's like crazy how that works out, man. It's like, the more I do in this world for the good, the less shame I have attached to me and who I am, and like, I'm more able to look at myself in the mirror and be okay with who Joe is, and not so worried about all the bullshit that's going on around me. So my sponsor used to always tell me, drop a hula hoop over my head, and everything on the inside of that hula hoop's my business, and everything on the outside of it is not. So I try to apply that as much as I can. I mean, it's difficult some days because I still have that control issue where, if these people would just act the way I wanted them to act, then my life would be better. But it works out real well for me.
Right. Yeah, I had a group last night. We were talking about things you can and can't control, and the common idea is that there's not a lot you can control except for what is in your body.
Mhm.
And so yeah. But Joe, where can we find you, man? For anybody looking for you, man. Not looking for you in that kind of way, but
well, I'm on TikTok. My name is recover_life with a Y. So it's RECOVER_LYFE. Life is live your freedom every day. So, that's my TikTok handle. Joe Stan on Facebook, Joe Stan 44 on Instagram. You can get up with me in all those ways. Like I typically will give my phone number out on TikTok for people in recovery community. So sometimes, I mean, there's some people that I just feel like are creepy.
yeah,
For the most part, if you come at me in a way that's like, okay, like, I'm in recovery, like I'm trying to get sober, whatever, I typically will do whatever I can to be in touch with you. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Sweet. Joe, thank you for hanging out with me, man, and thank you for being a blessing in my recovery, man. Thank you for sharing your story.
Oh yes, I appreciate you having me on here, man. It probably helped me more than it helped you. So.
Hey, that's why I have people on here. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's about you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man.
All right, brother. Well, everyone, thank you for hanging out with us for this hour. And yeah, if you guys want to find Joe, you can find him at Recovery Life or recovery_life on TikTok. He's a super awesome guy. He's
It's
pretty damn
recover,
funny.
recover without
Recover
the
Life.
Yeah,
Recover Life.
life.
Sorry. Yeah, Recover Life. My bad.
Oh, you did.
Super funny guy. Mountain of a man. I'm short. I'm 5'5", and when I see any of his posts, I'm like, God, he's a massive man. So, but yeah, thank you for being here, Joe. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you guys later. Much love.
Appreciate it.